welcome to the third edition of Coffee with Ashish. And today we have a very special guest with us, Mr. Anil Parasher. The Before I introduce him, the topic for today's discussion is a very pertinent one. We're going to be talking about something which is in many ways the core of the modern day travel industry, which we all know by the name of Global Distribution Systems, GDS. Now, most of us take GDS for granted while we run our businesses. But if we take a moment to ponder and pause and wonder how the world was in the pre-GDS era back in the 40s and 50s, and you would realize how long we have come. I will try to share my screen and show you a picture. If you can see this picture. So this is from the 1940s, and this is the American Airlines back office. And this is how the ticket used to be issued. People used to call on a phone and they used to punch an order. And back on that screen, that lady used to have a seat plan and would manually allocate a ticket and seat. And this entire process would take almost 1 hour to 1.5 hours to issue a single ticket to the user. And fast forward now, where we get pissed off if the transaction is delayed even by a minute or two. This is how far we have come along. And from this era to starting of GDS, which was actually in many ways started in the 1950s, when American Airlines partnered with IBM and created something called semi-automatic business research environment, or the SABER, which many of us know as a short form for, kick-started the concept of GDS. And you would all appreciate that GDS also in many ways has made us learn technology and is very responsible for the maturity of technology globally as well as in the Indian trade. Whether you talk about desktop-based, green screen, or modern day web-based and API-based, now you have universal APIs where all the contents of airlines, hotels, cars come together in an integrated manner in a single API. That entire journey has set the backbone of modern day OTAs and has created the ecosystem where you have all these new age startups coming in. So I just wanted to share this backdrop with you that it's very easy to think about that GDS, we are using it, take it for granted, but this is how far we have evolved in the history, and GDS has played a very pertinent role. But over the last few years, we have also seen rising pressures from airlines, from the travel ecosystem, from the travelers themselves. And with the advent of NDC coming in, there is a growing, question around the role and relevance of GDS in the modern day. And with the current pandemic completely nosediving the segments, both domestic and international, I think the time is right to have a discussion on how do we see the role of GDS evolving post this pandemic, and what would be the relevance of GDS? And who better to discuss this topic than Mr. Anil Parasher, whom I consider as a personal mentor figure, and I'm sure many of you also consider him as your mentor. He is the president and CEO of Interglobe Technology Quotient. And prior to being the president and CEO, he was the group CFO at Interglobe Enterprise, where he has led transformational transactions, including the world span distribution rights in India. And he's also a member of the Interglobe Enterprise Group's executive committee, and he sits on the board of several Interglobe companies, including ITQ and Indigo. So we are in safe hands, and with him, the conversation is going to be driven by our host and host, Ashish Kumar. So over to you, Ashish, and a warm welcome to you, Anil Parasher ji. I'm going to sit back and drink my coffee while the conversation starts.
Thank you, Karthik. Thank you for the kind words, which I honestly don't deserve, but I very much acknowledge and thank you for that.
Over to you, Ashish.
Yeah, Ashish, you can hear us?
Yeah, I can. Karthik had muted us for a while. Okay. How's your coffee, Anil?
Yeah, it's all well. Thank you. Enjoying it. Thanks to you.
Thank you, Karthik, for setting the context. And I'll just dwell on it to derive at a future business model with you, Anil.
Sure.
I've always wondered that the air distribution, particularly in India, is resting on very faulty lines. And when I say that, I'll elaborate for 1 minute. You have the airlines which are constantly under pressure, and they find ways and means to cut cost. And distribution costs and per seat costs is one of the lowest hanging fruit, be it taking away the agency commissions in the 80s and so on and so forth, right down to hosting them in GDS. So when you look at GDS, they themselves are, of course, a friend of the airline where they host the inventory. But the airlines look for ways and means of hosting them in some different manner. They find Navitaire to host it as a slipping on the wheel. You find Unisys to host it for you. So the GDS are in pressure that for the airline, besides the fact that there must be a renegotiation of contracts almost every year. And I'll take you to the COVID-19 times as well when we talk about renegotiating of contracts. Then, of course, as Karthik says, that the NDC is, of course, snapping at the heels, and NDC is a separate subject which I'm going to address after this. So here's airline on one side, here's the GDS on one side, who's offering this distribution to the distributors, be it in the form of an API or be it in the form of a desktop. And they have to keep spending money. Besides, of course, they get paid by the airline who themselves keep negotiating their contract. They have to be very, very contemporary, and they have to spend billions and billions of US dollar in technology to make sure that they are contemporary out of the incomes they get. And not only does it not stop here, but the mobility adds to the woes because you have to evolve to the mobility times, and mobile developers are far too expensive than the normal developers, just to quote an example. And suddenly you get into from a transactional mode to an experiential travel. So therefore, the air softwares will have to keep evolving, and GDS will have to keep pumping in money to stay on the same place, literally. Then you have them give an API to the online industry. The online industry could be B2C, B2B, technology partners, it doesn't make a difference. It's an online industry. Then you have, of course, desktops coming. Now these, when I say it's resting on faulty lines. So here you have the online industry, B2B, B2C technology. They have to spend humongous amount of money themselves because just taking the API is not be it. They have to develop the user interface. They have to make sure that the searches come out well. They may have to make sure that many things come out well. And I think those pressures will come day in and day in more. So they're spending plenty of money on their own technology. Little do we realize that it's not just a one-time API integration. I mean, just to give viewers a sense, a mobile developer today costs 1.5 lakhs a month to 2 lakhs of rupees, right? And you need minimum one developer to be put on even on a smaller size OTA to be handle a GDS feed out of an API. So just give you a cost of recurring cost if you think life is easy for everyone. The OTAs and the B2B and the desktop themselves are under pressure to make sure they acquire their customers, and that's where it comes deep discounting, call it whatever, but they are under pressure because if they don't have customer, they are back-to-back commitments which need to be followed. Of course, then there is a monster and an elephant in the room which is lurking and has always been lurking, known as credit. And of course, credit lines are going to get deeper and deeper and deeper. So whether you're a TMC or whether you're an OTA, OTA is okay, you have payment wallets, etc., but you're funding a cash pipeline. So that's if you look at the distribution. Now, in the end, you have the airlines, which I say, as far as distribution is concerned, are sitting very pretty. They sitting pretty right? He's getting everything. So if you look at the whole distribution chain, there is a pressure on everybody to spend money for everything you do. Nothing comes from free. There is no free lunches. Anil, the question to you is, I'm going to be talking to you on a 2-year period. The period I'm going to be talking to you generally is the financial year 2021 and 21-22 for people to be able to understand and turn it into their business plans. How do you see the food chain and the distribution changing, if at all?
So Ashish, thanks very much. First, before we get to answer some of the issues that you raised, let me come specifically to your question that was addressed to me. That the year 1920, which is the year which has just gone by, we just saw the last flicker of COVID, uh, was coming on the back of the debacle of Jet Airways. And Jet was holding 25% of the India GDS market. So as it is, 1920 was a weak year because it had come, and in fact, Jet completed 1 year of demise just a few days back. So that was the period when it went down. So the GDS industry, as well as our travel partners, everybody has been under pressure because a very important airline partner went out of the system. So as it is, the business was down from 65 million market, that GDS million market, when I say segments, a particular segment, as you know, is from a point to another point B.
Point B, yeah.
So, the market as it is had dropped by about 25% as a GDS. And then when it was kind of time to ramp up, came this whole challenge of COVID. And this year, coming year 2021 and 21-22 definitely are going to be under huge pressure because of the loss of business, which is in fact negative currently. People ask me, is your business zero? I said, no, the business is negative, because while everybody's business is zero, our business is negative because we have been issuing refunds and cancellations and all of that.
Right. So if the benchmark is 31st March 2020 at 44.60 million segments.
Yes, that is correct. That is correct. And you can add another million or two because the impact of COVID was kind of coming in February and March. So even if you want to take a full-blown year, it would be 45 to 47 range.
Right. So before we start predicting the future and seeing what business models, out of this 44.50 million, what percentage of segments will be derived out of an API distribution model and the rest out of desktops?
Increasingly, most of the big boys, and which is where 85% of the business resides, are on APIs today. So API is the way to go forward. Most of the big people, and I can see some of them on the screen as well right now, they're all on APIs because that's the way the business model is. It's only the smaller agents who are not on APIs. So largely it's an API driven. Desktops is really on the way out in a way. And mobility and mobile solutions are a little less because we largely deal with the B2B market. They themselves as vendors, the OTAs and the big boys, they must be dealing on mobile solution more than we do because ours is more of B2B.
Right. So let's do some forecasting. With of course, some airlines reducing their flights, some airlines probably disappearing. I don't know. Obviously, inventory is getting added later as things open up, because even in the domestic segment, we are saying, it depends on what is a red zone and what is a green zone and so on and so forth. Obviously, it will happen the same way on the international counts, and we are saying it may or may not even open up in June and so on and so forth. So let's just put a progression that we might have a 6 months phase when things start opening up on a graded average basis. So if you are into May today, and it is probably September or October when you think that the number of flights which were meant to have come in would have come into the GDS, even then you're not sure. Then you have the next 6 months from October to March, when you probably would start leaving aside the demand for those capacities aside, but at least the inventories would be available. Now, if you predict that, where do you see 31st March 2021 closing in terms of number of million segments up for sale against 44.60 broadly?
Yeah. Ashish, the first quarter is going to be, which is currently halfway gone, is going to be absolutely soft or zero. And, I see it picking up to maybe 15% in this first quarter, to going to about 40% in the second, and to 60 in the third. And I see, in my view, what little I know about this business, I think this year would be about 40% of this 44 million segments. that we will be lucky if we get it, because there is lots of questions, lack of clarity, uh, confusion, clarity, governments going back and forth. You don't know when the COVID will come back. So I think if we can manage to get this year through on GDS, I am saying
Yeah, GDS.
it could be higher overall, because some of the Indian LCCs are not on GDS. It could go up to 50% of the current year, but on the GDS, I see no more than 40% in the year 2021 financial year.
So you were pegging at about 20 million odd segments closing the year, 2022, whatever.
Yes, you can
right?
say that. Yes.
If that be so, yeah, so
yes,
go on.
I'm saying that, and I'm also saying that the larger portion of this will come through the domestic route.
Right.
And less will come on the international, because international will be a challenge, may get extended further to the second quarter, and with the social distancing and other norms. So I see this 20 odd million, which you have said, would be larger number would be domestic.
Right. So assuming 12, 13 million comes in from domestic GDSs and the balance 7, 8 million comes from international, I think it'll be, and you've already given an assumption that 85% of it comes through the API driven base, which I don't think will change in the immediate future.
No, it will not change.
Percentage would remain. So viewers here can easily extrapolate the numbers and start putting some business plans in place for the air number. And obviously from the air numbers could drive, because the average size of transactions would probably more or less remain the same, give or take, I would imagine. Or you think there's transaction value will come down as well?
See, there'll be a lot of changes, but ultimately, I think by the year end, things will settle down. There'll be back and forth on the fare, because airlines will ask for more money if they have to leave an empty seat. Passengers are not going to be there to fly. Then how do you raise the fare? What call do you take as an airline? Do you say that, okay, let me have the fares a bit high, because anyway, whoever has to fly, because it's not going to be price-driven market currently. I don't see price-driven market in the year 2021, clearly. I think it's going to be more need-based for this year, and that confidence will build up by the first quarter of 21.
Yeah, so viewers can easily add the LCC segments to derive at a business plan for 2021 in whichever manner.
Yeah, that's my view, but everybody will have their view.
Correct. Let's move on to the year after.
Yeah, year after, I think things will begin to settle down. Hopefully a vaccine would be in place. I believe at a personal level that a vaccine is already somewhere around. It's only games being played in the market, but without getting too much into that is fair. I feel the vaccine would be in place. All the required medicines will be in place. The testings would be in place, and the traffic would pick up to almost 75 to 80% in the year 21-22 of this year. So
right.
Still we are below where we are, but I think that will be the more consistent year 21-22 as compared to 2021.
So perhaps there's a possibility you might reach this year closing mark at about 44 million.
If you're lucky, otherwise I think probably fall a bit short of that, but
right.
get closer to maybe 35, 32, something like that.
Right. So what we have derived, Anil, at the first half or quarter of our discussion is that we have come to a forecasting of what the segment distribution over the next 2 years is going to be. We obviously see that there's going to be pressure on the food chain, on the distribution chain, and people will have to innovate, because one of the things I see, of course, distribution moving to tier 2, 3, 4, 5 cities, at least on the retail side, if not on the corporate side. So here's the second part of my question. This thing about work from home, I extended to work from hometown, right? And when I say that, if I look at the numbers which I have with me, Delhi number of segments generally, that's 31st March 2019, contributed about 46.40% segments.
Yeah, that's right.
Bombay contributed about 21.1. That is 67% of the segments actually came out of these two cities. It doesn't mean that effectively, Anil, that these users are all based in these cities.
Absolutely.
They are plugged onto systems which could be operating from anywhere.
Absolutely.
Right.
It's a true globalization.
Yeah.
It really depends on where you are based.
Right.
You named 46%, which is almost just under half of the business comes
Correct.
from
Correct.
Delhi. But if you dissect, you'll find all the OTAs, MMT, EMT, Yatra, then Ankush's business, then all the TMCs. They're all based in Delhi.
Right.
So the business is coming from all over the country, but the business is getting booked
Right.
here.
Right.
And likewise, in Mumbai, there are consolidators and there are, Clay Trip and others. So that's where the 20-odd% is coming from. So it's truly global. You don't really know where the business is coming from.
Right. So air distribution is a ripe case to me in terms of technology and processes because they're already in place. Of course, you
Right.
can have your own mid office of the agencies and the back offices, etc. Leaving those challenge, I could really have a situation of make my trip, and I told Rajesh Magro Rajesh, I'd like to see make my trips 40% of the staff sitting in Bhubaneswar, Cuttack, Jamshedpur, wherever they are, their hometowns are, and plugging into the main system. Because that will obviously socially do many things. It'll change the pressures on your city, people to have it move out from their hometowns to work from, and in places like Delhi and Bombay where cost of living is more expensive, and thereby giving them that ease. The second thing I look at is women specifically after childbirth, etc., they move away from their careers. Here's a great opportunity for them to continue their career in even working from hometowns and home base. So socially, somewhere I feel the air, right, when we talk about work from home, etc., it may not be 100% there for a holiday business or for other businesses because the process and technology haven't been put into place. But GDS haven't done that, or air distribution haven't done that, and little tweaking, I think, isn't something that the industry and GDS themselves should evangelize and push for, work out of your hometown. And one more, just to add, I mean, if you look at all the TMCs, 80% of the business is derived out of the implant which sits in somebody else's location. They don't get to see their staff at all. So what do you say?
No, I think work from home.
I'm saying work from hometown.
Yeah, work from hometown is a real possibility. It's a mindset issue. It's a logistics issue. It's security issue. So there are many factors involved at the moment. Working from home is a completely different thing. We all are working from home, and in fact, ITQ, which also got a lot of publicity, was the first company to move out even before the lockdown orders came overnight, and that also speaks volumes of the preparedness of ITQ. Having said that, the fact is that you still working from home requires a lot of challenges. The networks are not the same. The personal devices security is required. There is social media sensitization. So there are challenges, but I think the big takeaway from this COVID for me is the work from hometown, as you said, work from your place of your city. All that is possible. It will require certain technology upgrade, but on the whole, that is the way forward. And I do see more and more of the work taking place with people based in their hometowns, which could be in the third tier, fourth tier. And I think that is the way to go forward.
Right. If you look at the traveler mix, obviously there's no real data because you can't make out from SME why they are traveling, reason for traveling, etc. But I'm told about 27% of the GDS counts are from pure corporate travel segment, and the balance come from your retail or whatever. But obviously there is a thin line because somebody who's buying in from an OTA could also be going for a business, or he could be SME. So Anil, the question to me is not only if you see a shift in these patterns, but more importantly that I think GDS play a very important role in capturing the data of the reasons to travel. I think if there was some way for you to design your systems for going forward, when intelligent systems are being built, when algorithms are being built, artificial intelligence is being built, the reasons for travel would play a very important role to be able to address customization, personalizations to these very travelers. What do you say before we close off?
No, absolutely, Ashish. The game is going to be in innovation. How are you going to do process improvements? How are you going to really improve the quality of products and services? Let me give you an example. And again, I'm very proud to give example of what ITQ has done. We have an application called VR3, which is really a refund, void, reissue application. And currently, when I say currently, since March end, when everything has been halted and everybody is only doing these things, whether cancellation, whether reissue, and all of that, our application is going overtime. Now that's a local homemade application which is bolted onto the GDS system. And so much so that even where airlines have cancelled, our applications and our teams have come to the rescue. So this is one example that I have taken to show that you have to come out with these game-changing applications. You have to bring that quality through digitization. Process improvements are important. Security, as I just mentioned, all of this is going to play a key role. And the difference is not going to lie in GDS versus GDS. It's going to be really what you can bring in addition. How can you help the travel partners sell ancillary revenues? What can you do more? It's changing. Everything is changing. What are the opportunities? And what are you doing? A friend of mine just sent me an application about social distancing. It's a workplace where you go close to a certain thing, it starts to make different noises and different messages. Fantastic. This is the kind of stuff. We are going to be travelers. All of us are going. We are in travel business. People are going to be traveling to different destinations. What are the risks of those places? What are the protections of those places? I don't know. I could be going to, let's say, Kenya or some place like that, and I have no idea what is the protection level, what is the risks I'm taking when I'm traveling, especially in light of this new thing. Can we come out with some app? Can we educate? So stuff like that, that is really the differentiator.
And Anil, this is what I take you lastly to my first question on the food chain and the distribution. Who's going to spend this money? Is the airline going to spend it in the feeds which will come from them? Is it going to be the GDS? Is it going to be the distributor? Who's going to spend money building all this?
Ashish, it's a combination of everyone. For example, let me take example. ITQ does certain things which our principal does not do. The principal does certain things which we don't understand. Our travel partner does certain things to cater to the customer needs. They have their whole IT teams. So it's each one of them has to do their part. Now the point is, can they all work hand in hand? Can there be some, taking advantage of each other? I think that is something which it happens, but I think it can happen in greater level, because another takeaway for me after work from home is the collaboration, the alliances.
Right.
World is different, and I think we have to behave differently. It's not me versus you. It's, if we are me versus you, we are all dead. So, we have to work together and see what advantages we can take from another, where we can bring value. And so each one is investing to the extent possible. Clearly, airlines are going to be under pressure currently, and so is everybody else. So capital expenditure takes a hit, but also here is an opportunity. So if you can't make it, can you collaborate with people like yourselves? Karthik does that. So stuff like that. Can we do that? Can we collaborate? It is not only about ourselves; it's about collaboration.
So is NDC dead and buried?
NDC, I would not say NDC is dead and buried. I would say that one, NDC clearly with this current setback is going to be pushed back. But let me just take you to the genesis of NDC. It started in 12 in the World Symposium, Passenger Symposium of 2017. They said 2020, 20% of the airline business will take place on NDC. The whole purpose of the airline technology standards that it had set to bring rich content and ancillary revenue. That's not happened. All airlines have done is they've taken away some fares from the GDS and put it, right. You call them branded fares, you call them, that's not.
And India only has a 1% penetration, though globally, of course, it was 10% pre. So
yeah, and let me tell you, some last thing on this NDC interesting. The current version which airlines are using, they don't even have facility to do refunds and reissuance. So that is there, but that will come with the next version.
Yeah.
So now, if you have to make a telephone call for a refund to an airline, I'm sorry,
you can't have parallel costs.
And after 8 years, you're really going nowhere, I'm sorry to say. So, it requires a complete relook and a rethink.
Great. I think Karthik is itching to get the questions on the floor.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, I think we have sort of covered everything. We don't
Yes.
have any such pressing questions. I think we've covered all the topics.
Right.
In case anybody has any questions, you can let us know. Otherwise, I am sharing the email ID. You can send your questions there, and we will discuss with Mr. Parasher and get back to you with the answers.
Yeah, the only sign off I would have to people who are distributors and travel agents listening in is, for heaven's sake, preserve your cash. And for heaven's sake, don't put it in the bucket of the corporates, because they'll get it from the bankers, they'll get it from you, and then they'll fly off to London, never to come back again. So don't do it, please. Save yourself.
Yeah, but those who have gone to London are coming back as well. only thing is we have no planes to fly them back home. So we don't know how we'll get there.
Anil, is always a pleasure.
Absolute pleasure.
And in these times, of course, you take care, and you and your family.
Thank you very much. And thanks for everybody to be online and spending their valuable time to listen to us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Karthik, for hosting.
Thank you.
Thank you, Karthik.
Anil.
And thank you, Ashish. Really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Have
you.
a great day, everyone.
Yeah, likewise. Very best.